The Life Talk Show is about testimonies where you can listen to be inspired, encouraged, uplifted, and entertained. It's the life. Good morning. My name is Ashley Cotton. I am the host for the Life Talk Show. And as you all know, that I do have a guest here with me virtually. And for those that are new, as well as those who are familiar with this talk show, you know that I invite different people from different backgrounds, from different walks of life to talk about their testimony, to talk about how they became, got into a relationship with Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, and just taking us on a journey about their life and some of the things that they had to endure, whether it was good or whether it's bad, because really we want to show the sovereignty of God. We want to, talk about things that may be taboo, or to talk about things that may be hidden that people may feel guilt, shame, or embarrassment about, and to know that all those things have been dismantled because of the love of Christ, because this is an even level playing field where we all have a past, and it's what you do and what you learn from that past to get you to where you are today. So without further ado, Twyla Marks is a woman of God who exemplifies the life of an overcomer. She's a Texas native sports lover, specifically speaking, a Dallas Cowboys lover who always thinks that they're going to go to the Super Bowl every year. That's not in her bio, I'm sorry. And has worked in the healthcare industry for 20 plus years. She's a single mother of 2 adult children. Her daughter is a college graduate of the University of North Texas, and her son is entering his junior year at Texas Tech. She is a survivor of a toxic marriage, which sadly led to divorce. Her marital roller coaster ride and rediscovery has positioned her as an expert on helping struggling relationships find resolutions. She's a new author, podcast host, speaker, and creator of Facebook group of Life After Divorce, Get You Happy Back, HAPPY back. So let's welcome Twyla to the Life Talk Show. Thank you for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having me, Ashley. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, Twyla. So take us from the very essence of you. Like, who are you? Speaking of, your past and the things that you have to endure and overcome, just so we can be an encouragement to someone that may be going through it, and feel like they're alone, maybe feel like people don't understand, people don't get them, but that's not true, because some way or another, we have experienced what we've experienced, endured what we had to endure.
That's right. Absolutely. Yes. So thank you for having me. I'm Twyla Marks. And as far as my past, it started off very, very interesting, very rocky, I would say, but I'm grateful to God that I ended up in the hands of my grandmother. So my grandmother raised me from birth, well, really from a toddler. And I never knew the reason why I was with my grandmother until I was grown. And I wrote about this in my book, but I'll share some snippets of that right now. So my grandmother raised me as a toddler. My mom was gone, didn't know what was going on there. And then when I finally reunited with my mother, she wanted me to come live with her, right? So I thought, well, by this time I had developed a relationship, a strong bond with my grandmother, to the point of I actually called her mom, not knowing anything different, right? And so at about 9 years old, that's about third grade, my mom decided she wanted to raise me. So she literally came to get me, took me out of my grandmother's house to Amarillo, Texas, where she and my stepfather at the time resided. So as you can imagine, Ashley, I was distraught. Oh my goodness. I mean, to literally take someone, and basically I felt like a stranger or an outsider in that home. I knew my mom, I had seen her, I had visited her, but I didn't want to live with her because at this time, my grandmother is mom to me. And even to this day, I don't call my mom mom, I call her by her first name. We do have a great relationship now, but it hasn't always been like that. And to God be the glory. He allowed me to forgive her because that was a traumatic experience at 9 years old that I actually had to go to counseling for. My hair fell out. I was very nervous, had a lot of anxiety as a 9 year old. I have a brother that we share the same mom, and I also have two sisters that we share the same father. So, transition a little bit. Speaking of father, I didn't know my dad. I didn't meet my dad until I was 21 years old. I knew he existed, but I just didn't know him. Wanted to know him. And so I really felt actually like an abandoned child. I didn't have either one of my parents in my life, and so I really felt like, wow, nobody wanted me. What happened? What was wrong with me? What did I do? So blame myself. And so it wasn't until I had my daughter, which I had my daughter at 21, where I really started to seek God and ask God to help me forgive, especially my mom, because at that point I didn't know my dad. So I was really wanting to forgive her because I wanted my mom to have a relationship with my daughter, her first grandchild. So I didn't want my feelings to take over that because if I still harbored those bitter feelings towards my mom, she wasn't going to have a relationship with my daughter because I didn't want to be around my mom.
So there's a lot of, one of the questions that I want to pose to you is that why are there so many broken relationships when it comes to a mother and daughter relationship? Why do you think that is?
Wow, that's a good question. A lot of times I think moms, single parents, to be specific, they have these kids at such a young age, and maybe they're not ready to be a mom or don't really understand what it is to be a mom. So I think that could be something that has something to do with it. Me personally, at 21, I can't say I was ready to be a mom. It just happened. But I did the best I could because of my past. I gave my daughter the world. It was just she and I for several years until I got married.
And you know what, Twyla, one of the things, what you just said and what I've heard, even dealing with different dynamics of relationships is that when we look at our parents, back then, we place the blame on them. Like, why couldn't you do this? Why couldn't you be this way? Why couldn't you? But in what you just said, that at 21 years old, you try to give your very best to your daughter. And I believe that looking back now, that parents, they have all the right intentions, hopefully, to do the very best that they can do by their children with what they've been given, from what they've been taught. And you're not going to always hit it on the head. So one of the biggest things is letting go the guilt of that. I think that parents walk around with so much guilt and so much burden because of how their children may have turned out, for the best or for the worst. But maybe they carry such a burden on themselves because they said, well, I wish I could have been there. I wish I could have did this differently. But really, you're just trying to make the best lemonade out of the lemons that you've been given, for your life. And so, that's a very interesting point. And so, you have forgiven your mother. So where do you and your mother stand now?
Oh, absolutely. We have a great relationship. My mom actually lives with my grandmother there in Wichita Falls. We have a great relationship. My brother, he lives in a different state. And unfortunately, I have lost both my stepfather and my biological father. My biological father about 15 years now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was a challenge, but I still give God the glory. He allowed me to meet my biological father and have a relationship with him for about 12, 13 years. So that is just amazing. And, I know my other side of the family, aunts and uncles, and, it was wonderful. It was a reunion that I'll never forget. Oh my gosh. That's a book in and of itself, how I met them. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
reconciliation.
yeah,
So from the
yeah.
point that you met your dad at 21 years old, what was that like? Because I'm sure there had to be a lot of healing to take place with the dynamic of a father and a daughter
Yeah.
relationship.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yes. That was, oh my goodness. So as you can imagine, 21 years old, and I'm trying to catch up for the past 21 years that he wasn't in my life. And I asked him, I'll never forget when we did meet the first time face to face. I was sitting in his living room. We stayed up all night, Ashley, and he just said, ask me whatever questions you want to ask me, and I did. And then some,
Mhm.
and it was amazing because we connected. It was like I had known him forever. I mean, that DNA is strong, girl. I mean, it was because I just said, you are my dad. First off, I look like him. And then second off, we had some of the same characteristics and traits and our disposition and everything of that nature. So yeah, it was an amazing time. He was involved heavily with my kids, and at the time I was married. So I would go out there and we would visit him. No, I was not married when I met him. Excuse me. After we developed a great relationship, was married, and then we would take visits out there. He was in South Carolina, and he'd come here, and we just had a relationship. And unfortunately, cancer took his life, and he's resting in glory right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's pivot a moment because in your bio, you did speak about your marriage, which ended in divorce. So tell us a little bit about that and how you were able to overcome such a detriment, from being married, happily married, I would assume, to having it to fall down.
Yeah, yeah. You said one word, happily married. At one point, I was happily married. I would not say that it was all a nightmare on Elm Street every day. No, it was not. I'm married. We both had a kid from a previous relationship. My daughter was 4, his son was 4. So we already had a blended family going into that thing. Little did we know we were also pregnant. And my son. And so we did not get to really experience what marriage is like without children, honeymoon, and all of those nice things that come along or comes along with marriage. So it was an already made, hit the ground running type of family. So that put some pressure on me and him, I'm sure. But I tried to get through it. Once my son was born, it added more fuel to the fire because of we had these 2 kids. They were both 4. They weren't even in school yet, and so the attention was taken off of them, placed on my son because he's a newborn, right? And neither one of the children, the 4-year-olds, had experienced that. They didn't have other siblings. This was it. So that was tough, but you know what? Throughout it all, we were in church. We tried to make things work and do our best to make it be the best family with the nice house and the white picket fence. But Ashley, I just wasn't happy. I felt like I was wearing a mask almost every other day. People could see it. Little did I know, unbeknownst to me, but I was not happy. And in about year 5 into that thing, I really wanted to leave him. But you know what? I stayed for the kids. I'm not saying that's a great reason to stay, but I did. My heart was with the kids, especially his son. I had taken such a love for this kid like none other. A lot of people didn't even know he was not my biological son because I treated him like he was. So I wanted to leave. My grandmother is my friend, my heart, my everything. I talked to her about everything. And I reached out to her and I told her some of the things that was going on so she'd get an overview of it. And she said, "You still love him, so you need to stay. Do you still love him?" And I could not answer no. I said yes. I loved him, Ashley, but I was not in love with him. And those are two different things.
So
So,
what's the two different things, and break that down for loving
yeah,
a person versus being in love with them? And when you're in love with them and you think that you're in love with them, is that infatuation? Is that lust all combined into one thing?
yeah, yeah. So, what I say is, I loved him. If anything were to happen to him, I would have been sad, but I wasn't in love with him, meaning I did not feel I could take a bullet for him. I did not feel that kind of connection with him. Like, I just didn't. And um, there was a lot of arguing going on, and oh my goodness, so much. So I stayed. I made the decision to stay, and we also made the decision to get in counseling. We tried that. Things got a little better. They did. I can't say they didn't. A little better, but there was still a missing piece. I wasn't happy. I was not happy in it. I thought, Lord, I know you have better for me. We would argue over the simplest things, just simplistic. I mean, are you going to church? Leave church arguing over what we're going to eat. I mean, it was tough. It was tough. Like, how are you arguing, going to church? Well, wait a minute. Okay, you going to church, you arguing. But when you leave church, you should be good because you just got the word. You right? But no, yes. And the kids saw that. They weren't happy. And a lot of people, and I did it, I stayed for my kids, but a lot of people will do the same and probably have done the same. The kids know that environment is toxic. It's
So let me
toxic.
ask you this, Twyla, that why do we stay in toxic relationships for the kids' sake when really the kids see what's going on? I mean, you're not going to be able to hide it, you know? And so it's like they can discern too, especially being young, they can see what's going on. And I'm pretty sure it's affecting them in some capacity. So where is this standard? Who says you stay in your marriage no matter what, even if you're being verbally, physically, mentally, emotionally abused, and you try and it's not going anywhere and you're unhappy, and then there's more baggage that you have to work out of? Who says that you have to stay? Like, I mean, where is God in the midst of that? Because I know that people have like a facade. They have this standard of what they want their marriage to be, whether it's based off, you know, romance novels or movies and things that we see, which is just a snapshot. But really, to understand the foundation of marriage and know what it goes into having a healthy, successful marriage. But, you know, what do you do during those times of the winter season, of a fall season that occurs within your marriage? Can you endure the winter storm? Can you endure it? Or do you simply give up? And so your grandmother posed a question to you to say, do you love him? And you say, yes, I love him, but I'm not in love with him. So where does this make believe marriage or whatever comes from? And really getting down to the nitty gritty of the root of it all to say, why are we in this together? And if you can, since you've been married, I have not been married, so it's only so much that I can speak to. But, you know, there's a fleshly marriage and then there's a kingdom marriage.
Absolutely. Oh, yes. So let's start with the fleshly. Listen, Ashley, we only knew each other 10 months before we said I do. 10
Okay, and
months
so
from
where
the
did
date
God
we
play
met.
so did God confirm it to you? Was God involved in it to say, yes, this is your husband, you know, like, because I know for me, like, I go before the Lord and say, God, if this person is not for me, reveal who they are, reveal their character of their heart. And
Yes.
he does. And it's so interesting because I mean, I'm speaking of men of God who act like the worldly men, like
Yes.
you in the church, you preaching, you saying this and you saying that,
Yes.
but it don't align up with how God's
Come
standard
on.
is for you and for what, and I'm just looking and I'm looking at the back. And, I play my part as well. But my
Right.
thing is that if I'm looking for a man of God who I will want to be with, who I desire to be with, you haven't shown me any difference. So I treat you the way I treat you, like you
Right.
are a ninja in the street, because that's how you're
Right.
portraying yourself.
Right. Right. That's good. Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes. So where was God? God was not in it. I tried to convince myself that this was the man for me and this is the man that God had for me. No, no, ma'am. That's not that's not how it works with God. And you know what? I mentioned earlier that we found out I was pregnant. I was pregnant at the altar, and so it was like this man moved in. He came over a few nights, and next thing I know, he was moving a bag over. The next thing, he and his son was living with my daughter and I. I had just moved to Dallas. I hadn't been here 6 months, and so God wasn't in it. Like I said, I tried to convince myself and convince others, but they already knew. They knew. Some family members on my side said, "Don't do it," and I said, "I have to. I have to. I don't want to have another kid out of wedlock. I have to do this." So,
Okay, so
yes,
there it is. Because of past things that has happened, right?
yes,
That we hold on to, and things that we have put ourselves in, whether it was, our own will, because we do have a free will. We do have our own will. And that's the thing, because of the fact that you had one child out of wedlock, you didn't want to do it again. So it's
right,
like, okay, I'm going to accept this because of that very one thing that has happened that I don't want to happen again.
yeah,
And then you get into a marriage and everything. But still, there's grace, right?
yes,
Because
yes,
it could have been as worse. It could have been, worse than what it was. And so God's
yeah,
sovereignty and grace, and that's what I really want to highlight, because he is a good father. He allow us to do what we want to do, even though there's going to be consequences to our choices. And we don't
right,
see that down the line, because we see right now. We see what's in front of us right now. And so I just, with this season of engagements and people being married and so
yes,
on and so forth, I really hope that people will invite God in as that three chord, and to
yeah,
say and go before him and say, God, reveal this person. That's what I will always ask whenever I was dating someone, or if I had an interest in someone. I would
yeah,
say, God, reveal this person's heart and this person's
yes,
character to me. And he would. And I would be
yeah.
like, dang, like, I like them. Like, I just wanted to get to know them. And he's
You
like,
ask
no,
God
because
for
you
something,
asked.
He gonna give it to you.
Right. And he did. And so now here's the choice that I'm laying with, that are you going to move forward after I revealed them to you? Or what are you going to do? And it's simply, after a while, I did have to let go. After a while, I had to say, you know what? This is not
Yeah,
for me. This is not what I want. And I'm not going to settle. So I just
that's
have to
right.
wait for God to bless me with that man that he has for me, who will love me. And also, guess what? I'm not here by myself. I have a son too.
That's right.
So my prayer is that the man that God has for me will love not only me, but also my son, and understand that this is a 2-for-1 deal.
That's right. This is a
So you're
package
not just
deal.
coming from
Right.
me, you're coming from
Right.
my son too. So get your mind right.
Exactly. And that's so funny you say that, because initially that is what swept me off my feet with my ex, because he did so much for my daughter, even in the dating phase. And I thought, whoa, but that you got to be careful for the representatives. You got to be careful for the
Mhm.
representatives. Folks
Oh yeah,
will represent, but they can only represent for so long, because the real them is going to come out eventually.
X right. Eventually. So now you go through your divorce. So what happens life after divorce? Because you said that you're happy, right?
Yes, I
So
am
what
very
was the
happy.
process to get from divorce to where you are now?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So I've been divorced 13 years. The divorce, we were married for 10 years, and it was very rocky for 3 years, as far as he did everything he could to attempt to make me lose my mind after the divorce was over. Meaning, I know your facial expression
I know.
saying,
I'm
like,
sorry. Like,
what?
yeah, my facial expressions says a lot,
Right.
but
But
don't get
yes,
caught up in that.
yes, oh my goodness. And I don't want to go into too much detail because I write about it in my book. But just for example, Ashley, if I was a minute or two late for the drop off, the back and forth on the weekends, the co parenting thing that the judge ruled for us to do, he would call the police and say that I'm interfering with his visitation for that weekend. It even after this is how I knew he was crazy. Well, I knew before, but even after I text him, we didn't talk. It was via text to let him know that I was running late. I worked way in North Dallas. I had to get way back to Mansfield. Dallas traffic. It's horrible
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, okay, I'm running late. We met at a neutral location because I did not want him knowing where I live, but he did eventually find out. But that's a whole nother story. They don't have to buy my book to read the rest. But anyway, even after I tell him I was running late, he'd call the police. He did that multiple times until he felt like he had enough documentation to quote unquote prove that I was interfering with his visitation. And we went back and forth to court. And I'll never forget the last time that happened, the judge said, if you come in here one more time with these bogus accusations where she clearly has advised you and communicated with you that she's running late, you will be in contempt of court. He didn't do it anymore. He was
Mm-hmm.
trying, that is just one example, but there's a myriad of things that he did to me that I wrote about that he just attempted to make me lose my mind because he was bitter. I initiated the divorce. So he was bitter. He was mad and angry and upset, all of those things, and it was rocky. But after we got through that, he got tired of fighting me, realized that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, right? He realized
Mm-hmm.
that he was being insane. So he stopped doing everything. He came to me, Ashley, and asked me for forgiveness. He said, I'm tired of fighting you. Would you please forgive me for everything I've done? And I hope that your life is better.
And did you
Like,
forgive him?
I forgave him. I forgave him. I really did. I said, okay, okay, we got to learn how to co-parent. Now my son is 21 years old, or our son. He has a great relationship with his father as well as me. He loves both of us. And one thing I did not do, or attempted not to do, I won't say I didn't, because a couple of times it did slip out. I made it a point, or I was very intentional in not talking about my son's dad, my ex, in front of him. Now, sometimes I'm human, right? I lost it, based on some things he did during that 3-year time period after post divorce. But I did my best because my son was in the sixth grade. So, all from sixth grade to about junior in high school, he saw all of this foolishness going on between his dad and I.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried my best not to talk about him, or call his dad out his name or anything like that. I was like, oh Lord, come on, I need you today. Woo, or go in the room and do something, get away, get out of my son's presence, but cry, do whatever I needed to do to release it so my son wouldn't see me act a fool
Yeah, for
towards his
sure.
dad. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So, what do you say to the person that is currently going through a divorce and it's very, devastating because you've been with this person probably for 10 plus years, 15 plus years, or however long, and
yeah,
you've come to the point where either you've outgrown the person or you're no longer in love with that person. And now it comes to, are we going to be cordial and respectful or one another, or are we going to be nasty and go at each other's throats? What advice can you give to that person that's currently going through now?
sure. Yeah, absolutely. The first thing I would say is when you go through divorce, there's a myriad of emotions that you deal with. I know, I get it. And first thing is first, forgive yourself. I felt like I was a failure. I felt like I let my kids down. Here I am because I'd seen all this generational cycle. I don't want to say curse, but a generational cycle in my family. People that have gone through divorce. There's not a one that stayed married. They're in the second and third marriages. So I felt like I was the same way. And here I am with two kids now having to explain to them later on in life, why didn't you stay married? Or, so I had to forgive myself. That's the one thing I would give to all the viewers right now, to forgive yourself if you've gone through it, or you're going through it, or you've gone through it. Second of all, be the best co-parent you can be. Be the best co-parent you can be. The kids need both of you in their lives. And because of the marriage did not work and the marriage dissolved, does not mean that you have to be bitter and angry towards that parent. Look at the kids. The kids want a relationship. And now, unless there's physical abuse or a reason why the kids should not be around that parent, that's different. But just because you don't like him anymore, or he's not your BFF, or she's not your BFF, does not mean to keep the kids away or use the kids as pawn to get back at the ex. Because all that's going to do is boomerang back on you, and it won't be a good thing. It won't. So those are the two things I would give as advice to anyone that's listening and viewing right now, going through that situation.
And one other question that I want to ask, because from my, I'm not going to say from my experience, that's not true, but from people that's close to me that have gone through it, and going through it or whatever. And one of the biggest things is that I've noticed that with men, their heart can change like that. I mean, how do you go from being married to 15 plus years or however long, and there are children involved, and the biggest thing that comes up is a divorce attorney, right? Where you will either have to pay child support or alimony, and it could go both ways. But we find that that's a struggle, that, you know what, I want to walk away from this clean, and I don't want to have to give you nothing. I just want to walk away from this. I don't want to give you no alimony. I don't want to give you no child support. I'm done. And how easy it can be. And I'm not saying everybody's not looped into this, but there are some that's out there that I can completely turn my back and just go and do my life and do me.
Yeah. And so your question is, how does that happen? After being with someone that many years, it's because
because that's your best friend. That's and I'm sure those scenarios come up where you be like, if we ever, not hoping that you will, but if we ever get a divorce, or if I happen to die, would you remarry? Like, those different scenarios, those things that come about in a marriage when you talking to your spouse. And I'm pretty sure it's like, oh, baby, blah, 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 it's all good. And then when it actually happens and you see that person's heart, or you see them acting out of character, it's like, oh my God, who are you? Like, I never thought that this will come to, this here, where we're at each other's throats, and then you don't even want to be involved. You don't want to even be able to support, like spousal support or whatever. It's like cold turkey, like, nope, like, dang, what happened from the past few years that we were together, or how many years we were together, all of a sudden to it's just being cut dry. I mean, is there any talking? Is there any negotiation? Is there, let's meet each other halfway and let's discuss this here before we even bring an attorney? Because 9 times out of the attorney is going to look at the facts. The attorney is going to look at what's on paper, and they're not going to go off no emotions and how long. Listen, we got to get down to business. So this is what this is.
That's right. Right. The emotions, you go sit on a couch and talk to a therapist. But the attorneys, business only. Yeah. So I think with that, how that happens is one of the things my ex and I, we attempted to come up with our own plan, the mediation, and that didn't work. Because if I said one thing that he did not like, oh no, that's not going to work, I got to go get my attorney. I mean, one thing. And I said, well, I mean, even with the visitation, we couldn't do it. It did not work. And I had to go get my attorney again and say, listen, we've got to come up with a better plan because he wants to do what he wants to do. And my ex is a narcissist, very much so, to the 10th degree. And so that didn't help. And yeah, I think because emotions get involved, and you could be married 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and the person or the soon to be ex-wife and soon to be ex-husband can say, oh, we're going to get through this peacefully and cordially. No, I don't know one single divorcee that has gone through it peacefully and cordially. Now, after it's over, they may become the best of friends because I have heard people doing that. That's not the case with me. I don't even talk to my ex-husband. So I don't know how that is. I don't experience that and don't care to talk to him ever again. I'm not bitter. I've forgiven him, remember? But I just don't have a desire to even have a conversation with him. For what? For what? His son is grown. His son has a good relationship with him. My son and I don't even talk about what his dad has going on. And that brings me to another point before we move on, as I'm sure you might be ready to move on. But hey, listen here. I told my son, and I hope this helps someone. And listen, when he was in the 6th grade, when this happened, I embedded in his mind, I said, son, what happens under this roof stays here. You don't go and tell your dad anything that's going on, and vice versa. I don't want to know anything about your dad. I don't want to know if he met a new woman. Only thing I want to know, if the woman mistreats you, you better tell me. But other than that, I don't care to know anything. And I mean that, son. And he said, yes, ma'am, mama. And to this day, he is 21 years old, Ashley. He doesn't tell me anything. I don't ask him. And so, but I embedded that in him from 6th grade, they're 11, 12, somewhere in there, 6th grade, all the way to now. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And because all that's going to do is get your emotions involved and tied up again into something that you're trying to heal from and move on from. So you don't need to know what's going on in each other's households.
Wow, that's some good advice, because I think that you do become emotionally attached, right? Even though you're not physically there, but there's still some emotional strings that are attached that you do wonder, you do want to call up that ex and be like, hey, what you doing? Hey.
Yeah.
When it's lonely at night, right? Only on the nighttime, and during the day you about your business, you work, you doing, but when you land in your bed at night, and you looking like, and you be like, I want to call so that's good. Your business is your business over there in your household. My business is my business over here in my household.
There you go.
All right. And where are you now today, Twyla?
Oh, wow. Yes, I'm happy. Like you mentioned in my bio, I got my Facebook group, Get Your Happy Back. Excuse me, Life After Divorce, Get Your Happy Back. So y'all get your happy back. I'm happy. As far as the dating life, not really dating, but I have obviously since my divorce, and I've been in a serious relationship, which that didn't work. Like you mentioned earlier, Ashley, allow God to reveal that person to you, girl. He did. He revealed, and I left. So, yeah, I'm happy. I'm a podcast host. I'm busy doing that. And of course, I'm in the process. The next book is coming. Can't give too much about that, but yes, I'm writing, and I'm just living my best life. And when God sends me the man, oh, sure, absolutely. They can go to my website, TwylaMarks.com, or it's also on Amazon if you want the ebook format. And yeah, it's $10, and that's me. I'm doing my thing. I'm living my best life.
All right, Twyla. So now I'm about to hit you with the hot track of my fire rapid questions, okay?
Sure.
All right. So first question, what is your favorite verse in the Bible?
Oh, yeah. Proverbs 3, 5, and 6.
Number 2, how do you get into the presence of the Lord?
I just began to pray and thank God for what He's done and what He's about to do in my life.
Number 3, what do you think heaven is like?
Wow, I think heaven is just so free and it's just praising God all day and no worries, no stress, nothing, just glory, glory, glory.
Number 4, who would you like to meet from the New Testament or Old Testament?
Oh, wow. I would love to meet Paul.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
interesting, Paul.
yeah,
Yeah, I have a
yeah,
lot of guests that say they want to meet Paul.
yeah.
And number 5, given the opportunity where you're in a quiet, intimate setting, face to face with God, and He manifests Himself to you, what would you say to Him?
Oh, gosh. Whew. I would ask God so many questions or things of that nature, but I would first ask God, who do you want me to be with? Don't allow me to pick the wrong man ever again. Please. Yes, yes.
Okay, and bonus question. So this is the last question. It's the bonus question.
Yeah.
Um, through it all, through everything that you've endured, through everything that you made, your mistakes, your free will, everything, and let's just say that He does not bless you with the desires of your heart. I'm assuming that you will want to be remarried, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what if He didn't bless you with that, or it turned out to be something totally different than what you were expecting, what you wanted? Would you still serve Him and honor Him, or would you completely walk away?
Oh no, not completely. No way, not ever completely walk away from God. I would serve Him and serve Him even better or even harder, because the storms only come to make you a stronger person.
Amen. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Is there anything that you want to say? Any last statements, comments, or anything before I let you go?
I'd just like to say, Ashley, thank you so much for having me. I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation, and it's been a pleasure and honor to be here with you this morning.
Thank you for coming on. That's our show. Thank you to the listeners, to the viewers, those that are watching live, as well as the replay. I greatly appreciate it. Please share this, like this, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And as always, I will see you this Saturday with a new guest. Take care and God bless. Bye.